what is all this beautiful gibberish? It's the anatomy of every story that's ever made you forget to breathe. From that moment when your hero's world implodes, we call that an inciting incident, darling, to the point where they're so deep in trouble they could dig to China and still not escape their problems. Think of this map you're seeing before you as your personal GPS through the terrifying wilderness of what happens next. Except this one actually knows where it's going. This will give your story that structure. I'm going to show you that it's applied to pretty much every good story that you've ever watched on TV or read in a book. And for the example to help explain what all this means and how I use it, we're going to go through Spider-Man. Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales. Or is it Morales? Morales? I think it's Morales. Morales. Let's get going, I say. All right, and that's probably going to get me canceled because I'm going to be called a racist. But that's not how I meant it. Right. So the first thing is the world building, right? So how this map works is this is how your story progresses. It starts here and it ends here. This is the aftermath right here. This is the climax. Goes from there to there. But before you want to dive into this whole thing, understand what all this up here means, what all this down here means, and then what how you can utilize this right here to help build your story. It's really important to understand this right here, the theme, and this up here. This is your message, the reason why you're telling the stories, right? So as Spider-Man, well, they probably have other alternative motives why they're telling the story, but still, they always try to have some sort of theme. And Spider-Man does have a theme. There's a couple themes of Spider-Man, but one of the themes is that anyone can be a hero, right? Like it doesn't matter. Like anyone can wear the mask. It is anyone could be a hero in their own way. That's kind of the theme that's presented in this story. And that's kind of their message, like, "Hey, be yourself and you can be a hero," type of thing. Like, "You can do it, just believe in yourself." Maybe that's it. Maybe that's really the theme, believe in yourself. That might be it. Anyway, so you gotta have something you wanna say, some message you wanna give. Because why tell the story at all? I mean, unless I guess it's just for money, you just wanna make a cool story. But even then, like I said, even when Hollywood just wants to make a bunch of money off of a cool franchise like Spider-Man, they still wanna have a theme, like, even if it's a basic theme. So have a theme. Think about what the theme is. Think about what your message is. If you're writing a novel, it's really a novel's a lot of work, right? It really is. So you really should have more inspiration besides just I want to just tell a good story. Like, okay, that's a good like paperback you read on the airplane and throw away or something, never read it again. It might be a fun story, fun romp, but you don't remember, you don't think about it. Think about movies, think about books that really make you remember them. Like, I don't know, Blade Runner or Dune. Dune's like my favorite book. Well, it depends between Dune and Fear Nothing, but Dune is a deep book. And I've read it several times. One of the few books I've done that with. And it's because it's so deep. It has such awesome richness to it. It has messages. It has a point. There's a reason why it exists, and it's not just to tell a story. So anyway, that's the first thing I wanted to say. It's super important. So, what does all this mean right here? Well, let's go through it with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So, the first thing is you got to do some world building, right? This is like, Miles' normal life in Brooklyn, how, how Spider-Man exists in that world because it starts out with Spider-Man. He's like, yeah, Spider-Man type of thing. And then there's like the Miles shows himself to be kind of funny and spunky. Father embarrasses him at school. This is all world building, right? Helping us get to know the character in his normal world before we do this, before we have the inciting incident. That is, we give him an opportunity, some opportunity, something changes his normal world that we set up here, and we might even set up like a need that the characters didn't know they need, but they do need. And anyway, so his father embarrasses him at school, and then this helps us relate to him, right? And then also his funniness helps us relate. It's funny comments like some girls like, "Hey, your shoes aren't tied." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, I know it's a choice." And little funny things like that. And then there's an encounter with Gwen and how his hand gets stuck to her hair, and then she has to get her hair cut, to get his hand out there to cut her hair. That's why she has that weird haircut. And all that is to build the world that he's in. And the world that he's in is Spider-Man exists, so therefore superheroes exist. And, he's this normal kid going to school and stuff and has life problems. So it shows some of his like life problems a little bit, or his life struggles, and it shows like his school struggles. And all this gets us help us know him. And then a little bit with his like spray painting and with his uncle, and that he's close with his uncle. That's all the opening world building. And then right around 10%, and it's pretty dead on. Like if you can even time this for movies and books, it's pretty dead on when this happens. you kind of want to have this happen as soon as possible. So Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is an hour and 45 minutes long. And so when we get to that 10% or that 10% mark, that's right around, what is that, like 10.5 minutes or something like that. But right around this point here, around the 10-minute mark, we see that it's about to happen, right? It's a little bit after, so it comes a little bit later, and that's probably because they spent about 2 minutes or so setting up the whole Spider-Man thing. But then you have this moment where, right here, where I think it's exactly at 12 minutes, we see the spider come down and it glitches, so we know, oh, this spider is different, and it's going to bite him. Like we know that because he's become Spider-Man. And so it comes down and it bites him right at 13 minutes and 30 seconds. That's when it bites him. And so, like I said, the inciting incident is a little bit late, but that's fine. It doesn't have to be exactly at 10%. It can come a little bit before, a little bit afterwards. We want to try to have it around there in the story. And that's when you have this thing that changes their world. Their everyday world is going to be changed by this experience, by this event. And in this case, well, it changes him because now he's becoming Spider-Man, right? That's actually so I kind of got ahead of myself because he already got bit by the spider when he touches Gwen's hair. Sorry about that. I got a little carried away, got a little forward with myself there. So that happens after, obviously, he gets bit by the spider. Then he has that experience with her, right? So now he has this opportunity experience. In this case, it's not really an opportunity handed to him; it's one that he just has to accept because he's bitten by a spider, and now, or not just a radioactive spider, a radioactive interdimensional spider. And so now he has like super abilities, and then he needs to like have some goal now to start moving forward. Every scene should have a goal, and now like his goal is like, hey, I need to talk to my uncle. I need to figure out what's going on with me, like what's happening. Am I actually Spider Man? And so that's kind of like we still kind of need to hint at a need here. He kind of has a need to, have a better relationship with his father. That's kind of hinted at. Anyway, as we propel forward, we need to go into like a new situation, and we see that happen. He goes into a new situation, and so his first goal is to try to tell his uncle. And on his way there, he comes with this next goal. His next goal is to figure out how to be Spider-Man, or if he is Spider-Man. And then he meets Spider-Man, and now his goal is to learn how to be Spider-Man. And Spider-Man agrees, "Hey, man, I'll teach you how to be Spider-Man." He's like, "That's a fantastic idea." Now he has a goal to reach. I need to learn how to be Spider-Man. But we haven't gotten to the monkey wrench yet. And the monkey wrench is at 25%. And if you do that 25% of an hour and 45 minutes, that puts us at 26 minutes. Well, right at Spider-Man is dying actually at 26 minutes. Exactly at 26 minutes, Spider-Man is dying. It's when he's laying on the ground. He's like, hey, you okay. He's like, oh, coughing. That's not good. That's not a good sign. And then he has, Miles make the promise. The promise is stop Kingpin. Stop this machine. At 28 minutes, Spider-Man dies. That's when Kingpin smashes him, and that's the monkey wrench. Because you see, his goal is he needed to learn how to be Spider-Man. Now that's still his goal, but his goal is also to stop the Kingpin. But in order to stop the Kingpin, he needs to learn how to be Spider-Man. Well, the monkey wrench is Spider-Man's now dead. Spider-Man was going to teach him how to be Spider-Man. Well, now Spider-Man's dead, so how is he going to fulfill his promise? Right? He needs to learn how to be Spider-Man still. And usually between these two marks, somewhere between 25 to 50% before we have the no turning back, we have this right here that happens further actions and drive. Something else that's going to help him to further reach that goal. Like he has a plan to reach the goal, but now he needs a new plan. Well, right now, his plan to reach the goal is, well, I'm just going to teach myself how to be Spider Man. He goes and makes a funky looking suit, tries to teach himself how to be Spider Man. But halfway between here, almost exactly halfway between here and Spider Man, we have this happen where Peter Parker comes into the scene. By the way, I forgot to mention this, but this link up here, I'll post it in the description and stuff. You click on that link, it just takes you right here to this. You click through it, I have some other examples I give of each of these things, which is for another story I'm actually working on. If I have time, I might actually go through all that as well to show you like how I personally use those to come up with stories. And if I don't am doing that, well, I do have an old. Just search my channel. I do have an old one where it's not as cool looking as this one, but it serves the same kind of purpose and function. It's made a long time ago, but I go through some story examples in that one, or like one main story example in that one after the fishing one. End of all, actually, which is one of my books. Anyway, so by the way, I want to make another video on how to use AI to especially like revitalize your love for writing. Because I wrote like a lot of books and like I don't know, I think it was like 6 novels or so. Then I got halfway through the seventh one. I just kind of started kind of falling out of love with writing for some reason. I just felt it so hard to write. And what actually really revitalized my love for writing, got me back into writing, was AI. Was using AI to edit my work. And anyway, I'll get into that in another video if you want to hear all about it and how my work process now, where I can write like 20,000 words in a day now. Finished, ready to publish words, by the way. Okay, so back to the Spider Man thing. So somewhere usually between these two, usually right around the middle of this, you have this new further drive, and oftentimes that can mean a new plan, right? Because once you have the monkey wrench, you have to devise some new plan. His new plan at first is, I guess I'll just train myself, but then this actually changes that plan a little bit. That's when Peter Parker, right about 41 minutes in, which is right out the 39% mark, so right around the halfway between these 2 points. And in the movie, Peter Parker from another dimension gives Miles Morales further drive because he agrees to train him, right? You can actually go and do all this if you want, like forward, go through each part of the movie and see this is true. And then bam, that's when he meets Peter Parker. Peter Parker says, "All right, I'll train you." And so now he has this goal. I still need to stop Kingpin, keep my promise to Spider-Man. Now I got a new Peter Parker that's going to train me to do that. At some point, you can have an ally. It doesn't necessarily happen right here. Between like here and here is usually when it happens. And you have this kind of criticism. So someone kind of criticizes Miles Morales, and that does happen with Peter Parker. Actually, the whole gang kind of criticizes him and says like, "Hey, you're not ready. Like, you're not good enough yet." And his justification as well. I made a promise. I have to keep it. So then we have to get to the 50% part. That is the no turning back point. And this happens at 50% of this movie is at 52 minutes. Because at 1 hour and oh, did I say 1 hour and 45 minutes? I don't know why I said that. 1 hour and 5 minutes. Sorry, I don't know why I said 1:45. I think I said that, but anyway, 1 hour and 5 minutes is how long this movie is. Or actually, rather, I should say, sorry, I did say it right. 1 hour and 45 minutes. This movie is 105 minutes long. Okay, there you go. That's right. Which is 1 hour and 45 minutes. Anyway, at that 52-minute mark, that would be the halfway point. At the 52-minute mark, we have Miles he takes Olivia's computer, right? The doc's computer. So at this point, you can say, well, he's in too deep now to turn back. You could say that is the no turning back point. But it seems there might be another no turning back point in this story. Maybe you can say there's two no turning back points, but this is definitely one of them. This happens right on time, right at that 50% mark. He's kind of in too deep now. He's like, okay, I stole her computer. She's like, she's going to be looking for this other Spider-Man. So he's kind of in too deep now to turn back. That is to go back to his old life and everything and try to just give up this whole thing. I'm not going to help the Kingpin, or I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop the Kingpin now. I'm not going to help Spider-Man. At 1 hour and 4 minutes into the movie, this is where it's right after the halfway point. So this criticism here happens a little bit like right about here. So this couple minutes after, and that criticism is all the Spider people are like, Miles just doesn't have what it takes. He's not ready, and Miles turns invisible and leaves. So Miles decides he's still going to stop the Kingpin. And at about a minute and 8 minutes into the movie, we have the big reveals. Remember, I said revelations? Sorry, I didn't say that, but it's right here. This is a good place to reveal a revelation between 50% and 75%. By the way, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, this simply just means the story has a beginning, has a middle, and it has an end. So we have this place here for revelation, right? And then an obsessive drive as well, somewhere. Usually about here's when it happens, but it could happen like between here. And that happens, that big reveal is that he realizes that his uncle is the Prowler. And that's at about 64% into the movie. And then we have more to lose, right? We really at this point, that 50% mark, we realize there's more to lose, more complications. This between here and here is when all this happens. And that is, well, one, he learns his uncle now, and like he doesn't want to hurt his uncle or whatever. That's like more to lose. And he can lose all the spider people, right? The spider people need to get back to their dimension. And then more complications with the whole Dr. Octopus lady, and she's coming after them, and all the other bad guys now are working with the Kingpin. Then at a minute and 14, or an hour and 14 minutes rather, we see that his uncle dies, and then we have His father sees Spider-Man. He already doesn't trust Spider-Man and like his ways. Now he sees him next to his dead brother and blames Spider-Man. So that's further complications. Remember, so just gotta from here to start wrapping up the complications because you need to get to this point here. All seems lost. All from here to here, you're just gonna ramp up his obsessive drive to push toward the end and complication after complication to try to prevent him from reaching his goal until the point where the complications get so bad it seems like all hope is lost. Like how is he going to achieve his goal? So the 75% mark, that's at 1 hour and 18 minutes from this movie. That's when we hit that mark. And at that mark, all hope is lost because right here is almost exactly, actually, if you look at the movie, it's exactly at 1 hour and 18 minutes. All hope is lost. This is where we start the scene where Peter tells Miles that he's staying here. He's just not ready, and all the team agrees he's not ready. And Peter's the one who stays behind to tell him. The other ones are outside listening, but they tell him he's just not time. He's not ready, and then it extends onward to him tying him up with the spider webs and says, "Sorry, you're staying here." Shortly after this, though, sometimes you can really have this linger on where all hope seems lost. If it's a romantic comedy, pretty much all hope seems lost until we reach the final battle. And with the romantic comedy, the final battle is him trying to, him or her trying to get the lover back, right? Because something happens around this point, like in Shallow Hal, this is the point where he like realizes that he's dating a fat girl and he's like, shallow, and so he's just all mad about that. But then he realizes that he actually loves her and he goes, he wants to push back and all hope seems lost though because she's not into him. And so he's like fighting. That's when the final battle's all pushing towards trying to get her back, and he finally does. And everything works out. But here, you can also have it flip really fast. I think it might have been better if it burned a little bit longer, but in this case, it flips really fast. Like, literally, that same scene, just about a few minutes later, he taps into his super spider powers, multi-dimensional spider powers, and has the blue stuff, shock-looking things. And he zaps the webs off of him, and now he has this new determination. Gives it his all. He wants to really go, and he builds a new suit and everything. He's going to go and give it his all and help them. Also, all hope seems lost in another way. This happens a little bit later, but when they're all like fighting and stuff, and it just seems like they're not going to do it. The spider people are just not going to accomplish it because there's all these enemies fighting and everything. It just seems like, oh man, are they gonna do it? And then here comes, Miles with his new super powers, finally, able to do everything at will, and he bam comes in and helps and saves the day. Right, then we need to push on. And that pushes on to the final battle, which is actually going to be with Kingpin. So that's the climax at 90%. That actually happens exactly at 1 hour, or it's not 1 hour. Sorry about that phone call. So that happens exactly at 1 hour and 34 minutes. That's the 90% mark in this movie. And exactly at 90%, exactly at 1 hour and 34 minutes, the fight with Kingpin begins. And then Miles is like, "No, Peter, you have to go." So that's where you have this moral decision he makes. And so Miles makes a moral decision that, hey, you know what? You can't, I can't risk you, can't risk, losing you. You can't stay here. And he like basically trips him and then puts him back into the um, multidimensional thing. Says, you need to go back home. I got this, right? So he's risking his own life in order to save Peter. That's the moral decision. Do I save Peter and risk myself, or do I risk Peter and have him stay here? And then maybe he can never get back home or whatever. Maybe he dies or whatever. So he decides to save Peter and risk his own life to fight Kingpin alone and by himself. And then we have him doing that. He fights the Kingpin and wins. And then we get to the aftermath, which is where we have the big reveal. Not the big reveal. We have the thematic revelation. So you have Miles' decision where Miles saves Peter and sends him home. He risks his own life, and that's his moral decision, and that kind of helps us realize his moral self revelation. That it's worth risking yourself, and also he realizes that he is worthy of being Spider-Man. Like he can do it, right? He believes in himself now. And then in the aftermath, this kind of reveals the moral self, or excuse me, the thematic revelation is revealed, which is here. The thematic revelation is revealed by what Miles says when he's like, anyone can wear the mask or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording. And that theme, then the theme there is that anyone can be greater than they are. We can all be superheroes in our own way, right? We can all wear the mask. And this represents the theme of like empowerment, identity, and the universality of heroism. So that's it. That's how this kind of works, right? So you can kind of look at any story and see how it fits into this little diagram, pretty much. I recommend books like John Truby, Anatomy of Story. Excellent book. It's probably the main foundation for how I learned a lot of how story structure works. It was the most helpful, although this particular thing that I developed is not in that book, and all these ideas aren't in that book. Some of them are, a lot of them are, but not all of them. I gained a lot of this stuff from different avenues of life, a bunch of different, I mean, from experience and my own analyzing. I analyzed a bunch of stories, trying to figure out like the anatomy of the story, and then also reading some other material as well. But there's some other things you want to do too, and that is, I don't think I want to make this video too long, so I don't think in this video I'm going to go through how I use this personally. If you really want to know that, then watch my other videos I've already made in the past. Just search my channel for story structure, and you'll see then go to playlist, and you'll see my playlist on that. There's like 12 parts. But if you want a new one, then let me know, and I can maybe go through and kind of explain kind of this story I've been working on and how I utilize all this to come up with my stories. There's a couple other things I want to talk about. That is another thing you need is a character arc, right? The character has to have some arc. So he starts off as a normal boy, and he doesn't believe in himself, and he's has a hard time using the powers. He still has a hard time using the powers. He just doesn't know how to activate them because he doesn't really like truly believe in himself. And then by the end, he's like this superhero. Like he is Spider-Man, right? So that's his character arc. Boom, big character arc. And he like kind of has a good relationship with his father and stuff now by the end. And so I just put some things here like what is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3? What is the protagonist's goal? That's like Act 1. What drives him to the goal? What keeps him going? That's all of Act 2. Then Act 3 is the end. What sacrifices they make to succeed? And then really important here is foreshadowing. This is setup and payoff. So you can think of this, if you ever seen Avatar, there's a lot of really good ones in that movie. One of them is that Jake Sully, remember, like there's a scene where someone like says, "Oh, you're never." They laugh at him because he wants like this big dragon or something. Like they laugh at him, like no one's going to do that. Like no one's done that since my great grandpa or something like that. Like the Navi are like, no, that's not possible. Like you're definitely not going to do that. We can't even do that. And then at the end, he's flying it, and they're like, oh, my God, that's just such a powerful thing, right? Because that was the setup. The setup was you're not going to ever fly that thing. And the payoff is he's flying it. But you can also have foreshadowing. Like, let's see here, the example often given is a gun. If you show a gun, then make sure it's damn well used at some point. But that's foreshadowing. So you can really describe this gun that's sitting on a table. And then later on, someone picks that gun up and uses it. That's foreshadowing. So there's a bunch of different ways you can foreshadow. But another thing is this little section here is really important because as you develop this section here, it's going to start to help you develop the story. And then as you start to develop the story, you might go, you know what? I think it'd be better if they had a different fear. That might help the story better, right? Help me tell the story. Help me strengthen the theme I want to tell. Then you go back and you alter this, and this will go kind of back and forth. You alter some of this, you alter this, and it's kind of this back and forth, between these two things that helps you build the story and thinking about the theme. So with character building, the main thing is think about the needs, right? What does your character need? Do they need justice? Do they need love? Do they need courage? Like it's what they need. It's not necessarily what they want. What they need and what they want is sometimes the same thing. For example, in Wizard of Oz, the need and want was the same thing. The lion needs courage and he wants courage. Actually, I take that back. It's not as simple as that, right? Because it's not the same. So the lion believes that he needs courage. That's what he wants. And he believes that's what he needs. He needs courage. He wants courage. But it turns out that that's not what he actually needs. He needs to realize that bravery comes from facing your fears. That's what is all about. Bravery is about, hey, I'm afraid of this, but I'm going to face it anyway. And so that's the need he has. The need is to have that revelation, right? And so then you got to think about fears. And there's different kind of fears. There's a psychological fear. There's physiological fears, like a fear of spiders, for example. That can also be a psychological fear. But you can have just physiological fears, fears of things that are like physical in nature. You have sociological fears, fears of the society itself. Do you fear that the city is going to go into ruins, that the nation's going to fall, things like that? Do you have a philosophical fear, like existential angst, fear of your mortality and things like that? That can also be considered a psychological fear, but it's more philosophical in nature if you're thinking about philosophical philosophical things. It's good to have two of these kinds of fears. At least have one psychological fear and or philosophical fear. Sociological fear isn't necessary, but this one I think is having a either a philosophical or psychological is absolutely mandatory, I would say. And I think I spelled something wrong here. No, I think it's all spelled right. Physiological, and I was for some reason I was clicking here. I'm at this psychological. So give them at least one psychological fear. The physiological fears aren't so important, like a fear of spiders, fear of snakes. Indiana Jones had a fear of snakes. You could utilize it, like it could come in handy at some point. But if they do have a fear of that, make sure they face it at some point. That's part of the character arc, right? You give them these fears so they can change, and some fears maybe don't change, but you might want to have them change some fear. And you can have fear of love, fear of change, fear of rejection. These kind of fears you usually want to change. That's part of the character arc. So in the beginning, they really fear rejection, let's say, because their mother always. You also need to kind of tell a little bit of backstory about why they came to be that way. Why is it they came to have that particular fear, like a fear of rejection, maybe because their mother always rejected them or something like that. Maybe they have a fear of change, which a lot of people do actually. Pretty much, we all do kind of deep down. We don't like change, and so you can have them, overcome that fear throughout the story, and that gives a powerful ending. Like, oh yeah, they overcame their fear. That's fantastic. And as you think about what their needs are and what their fears are, and then you start plugging in the ideas into the story here, you start thinking about what are figure out these five things first, right? This. Figure out these five things first. Have a general idea what they might be in your story, and then that's going to help you start to figure out this more. And then you come back in and change some of this, and then start thinking about some of these things up here. Start plugging in some what is the plan and things like that. Well, the plan kind of goes with this. So, but anyway, as you plug all these ideas in, and then you come back here, and this will help you figure out the story more. So that's all I'm going to say for now, because I don't want this to lag on and be too long. But if you like this, you want me to continue it, you want me to do a modern version where I take you through my process and I use this to come up with a story, then let me know and I can do that. And then also, if you would like me to show you my whole entire workflow with using AI and how I can write 20,000 words in one sitting, like literally like in 4 hours or so. Like it's insane how fast you can write with AI. Talking about finished, ready to publish words as well. Then let me know and I can make a video on that. All right. And you're still, by the way, I'm not talking about having AI write for you. That's not going to happen. AI is not that good yet. Like it's horrible, actually. If you just try to tell it to like, hey, write this novel, and you start, all right, let's go chapter one, and just no guidance at all, and it just here's the characters, let's go, and it starts writing scenes. It gets so dumb so fast. Like it's just like, what are you doing? What's happening in the story? Like, do you realize you have an end you're supposed to go to? Like, anyway, it's not very good at that yet. But if you give it guidance, a lot of guidance, it can actually be really good and very helpful. So I'll show you how to do that if you want. All right, that's it. Bye for now.